Information, please. Presented each week at this time by Canada Dry, famous the world over for its fine beverages. Wake up, America. Time to stump the experts and enjoy a glass of cool, refreshing Canada Dry ginger ale. Every week at this time, Canada Dry trots out a foursome of almost infallible fact retainers who empty the contents of their minds in response to your questions. Here's how it goes. For every question we use, whether or not it's answered correctly, the sender gets $5. And if your question stumps our board of experts, you not only get $10 more, but in addition you receive a complete 24-volume set of the current Encyclopedia Britannica. Mind you, this is only if your question stumps our board of experts. Our editorial staff may reword your question a trifle. Don't worry about it. Whenever there is a duplication of questions, Information Please uses the one that was received first. All questions become the property of Information Please and should be addressed to Canada Dry, 1 Pershing Square, New York City, or in Canada, Canada Dry, Toronto. And now, may I present our Master of Ceremonies, Mr. Clifton Fadiman, literary critic of the New Yorker magazine. Mr. Fadiman.
Ladies and gentlemen, Information Please proceeds as usual, week after week, in its unrehearsed and spontaneous manner. This evening, the Board of Experts consists of John Curran, Franklin P. Adams, Oscar Levant, the trio you all know by this time, and as our guest, the renowned and distinguished explorer, author of I Married Adventure, Mrs. Martin Johnson. Now remember, listeners, for each question that's missed, Canada Dry rings up $10, and that's paid out to the sender of the question, plus 24 volumes of the latest edition of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Now we'll start off with a very simple question, coming to us from S. Lynch of Norfolk, Virginia. Name 5 sports in which a ball may be hit after it bounces. We have 2 hands up. I'll call on Mr. Adams first.
Lawn tennis.
Lawn tennis, yes, very good. Mr. Levant.
Cricket and softball.
Cricket and softball, that would give us 3.
Basketball.
Basketball, sure, that would give us 4. Mr. Kieran.
Water polo.
Basketball's wrong, I think.
Does a water polo ball bounce on the
Well,
way?
you can bounce it very easily.
Yes, it bounces
Mr.
very
Fadiman, I think I'm incorrect about basketball. You said strike it. You don't strike a basketball. You either catch it and then throw
You want to take
at
it
a
back?
basket. Well, I don't want those letters pouring in again.
No, all right, we'll take that back. How about Mr. Kieran? Give us
Polo.
polo?
Yes.
The ball may be hit after it bounces.
Why,
Sure
certainly.
enough. Are there any ball games played in the part of the country that you've explored, Mrs. Johnson? Any ball games at all?
No.
The Africans don't play ball games.
No, they don't.
Oh, what a field. Mr.
Soccer is a good substitute for basketball. You hit it with your head after it bounces. Not your head, the ball bounces, then you hit it with your head.
Yes, I get it. Subtle distinctions. That's right. Well, there are 5 or 6. There are now a number of others that might be named. Ping pong, squash rackets, high-a-lie. Mr. Kieran, wouldn't that be one that could be named? Dr. Harold E. Anthony of the American Museum of Natural History right here in New York sends in this question. It has 4 parts. We have to get 3 out of 4 if we can. Now, among the African animals that are most respected and feared by sportsmen, they tell me, are the rhinoceros, the elephant, the buffalo, and the lion. Now, these animals have sensory capacities which are developed in different degrees, and the wise hunter takes advantage of this fact when he's hunting them. What sense or senses are of most service to the rhinoceros? Let's start with the rhinoceros. What sense would you say is most useful to him, sense or senses?
You mean, what does he smell?
Well, you know what the senses are, Mr. Levant. There are 5 of them, according to the last census. Mrs. Johnson, were you volunteering?
Well, do you mean he's the quickest? He has the sharpest
Sharpest what?
scent of any animal now.
Oh, I
Is that
didn't.
what
I
you
didn't mean S-C-E-N-T. I meant which of the 5 senses, S-E-N-S-E-S, are most valuable to the rhinoceros?
According to Mrs. Johnson, I would say his ears, his hearing.
Yes.
She tipped me off. She said he's the quickest.
Quickest to hear?
I
No,
imagine.
that would be wrong. I'm sorry.
Well, I
It's
shouldn't
the
have been
sense of smell that is most valuable to the rhinoceros.
Yes.
Mr. Kieran?
As a matter of fact, the rhinoceros has watchmen on its back in the form of birds that usually give it warning before the beast itself scents, hears, or smells any coming danger.
You mean sort of pilot fish?
Lookouts.
That's right.
Yes, guards. Mrs. Johnson.
I know what they are. They're the tick birds. I should have thought of that a long time ago. They give the warning.
Well, we have lots of time. There's no rush. Anything that comes to your mind, just tell us about, Mrs. Johnson. Yes, thank you. But we should have gotten that. It's the sense of smell that's most valuable to the rhinoceros. Now, how about the elephant? Which of the 5 senses are most valuable to the elephant? Now, we have a lot of hands up here. Mr. Kieran?
I should say hearing.
Hearing would be one. There's still another. Mr. Levant?
Memory.
His lack of memory.
Oh, memory, Mr. Adams.
His lack of memory, I would say.
Lack of memory wouldn't be a sense.
How do you
We have
know?
hearing. Mrs. Johnson?
Well, I think that he has a very sharp scent. I should say that because we've always had
Sense
him
of
tell
smell.
it.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's
sense
right.
of smell.
Yes, that's right.
They all seem to
'Cause
smell.
Well, we may come to some in which that isn't the case, Mr. Levant. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson. Now, how about the buffalo? The buffalo. What sense or senses would be most valuable
Well,
to
he's
him?
the
Mrs.
same.
Johnson?
He's the same.
Same as what?
Well, he has a sharp scent.
Good enough. And there are other
Very
senses that are
keen
valuable to him.
scent. And also his eyes are very, very sharp.
His eyes
He
are
can
very
see
sharp.
much farther away than either the rhino or the elephant.
Good enough.
Nobody looks for him either.
No, but he looks for everybody else.
That's right. Well, that gives us 2. And he also has another sense developed, though perhaps not as keenly as a sense of smell. Mrs. Johnson?
A very sharp hearing.
Very sharp hearing. That's exactly right, Mrs. Johnson. Now, how about the lion? Would you say?
What?
The lion. The lion. King of beasts, the lion. Mr.
Well,
Johnson,
he
would
has
you help us?
everything.
He has everything. I'd love to know him.
You mean my man, the lion?
Well, he's
No, but which of the senses would you say are most developed in the lion?
I think his eyes.
Yes, that's quite right. And to a lesser degree, what would you say, Mrs. Johnson?
Well,
Well, you only have 4
again,
to guess
I
among.
think hearing.
That's right. Sight and to a lesser degree hearing. Very good, Mr. Johnson. That gives us at least 3 out of 4 and does not send $10, I'm sorry to say, to Dr. Anthony, who probably doesn't need the Encyclopedia Britannica anyway. The next question comes from Henry Jackson of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Give instances in fact or fiction where music is used in the following ways. We have to get 2 out of 3 here. Where music is used in a kidnapping. In a kidnapping.
Was that in a picture?
In legend or fact or fiction, or in a picture. Mr. Kieran.
The biggest mass kidnapping in history, the Pied Piper of Hamelin.
That's exactly right. Thank you. In that case, the Pied Piper, of course, played on his pipe and lured. Did he lure all the children away?
All
Mr.
but
Kieran?
one, the little lame boy, and the mountain closed before he could get into it.
You're breaking my heart, Mr. Kieran. Let's go on to the next part of this question. Give an instance in fact or fiction where music is used to transmit a message. To transmit a message. Fact,
Well-
fiction, Mr. Levant.
There are many instances in many moving pictures. Every spy picture has a million examples of that.
For example, perhaps a famous
Well,
one may occur to you.
What's the English one with Hitchcock?
That's right. What's it called?
Either the Vanishing Lady or the Lady Vanishes. I don't
Yes.
see the difference.
The lady vanishes. That lady, ladies
Well, there
first,
was a
vanishes
folk
second.
song which a native of that untitled country in the picture was playing on his mandolin. It's no plug for my song. Underneath her window, and he was properly killed. Well,
Very
you don't
good.
want to hear the story of the picture. You've seen it.
Well, it's too late. You've told it to me. That's exactly right, of course, Mr. Levant. Now, name a case where music is used to win a bride. To win a bride. In fact or fiction or legend. Mr. Levant again.
No Warner Brother picture. Now they all win brides with us. Listen to the song I just wrote for you, honey. You don't mean that type.
No, I don't mean that. How about Mr. Adams?
Why, it might be Orpheus and Eurydice.
Did Orpheus win a bride by singing a song? I think by playing a
He
lute.
played a
maybe.
harp, but he sang along with it.
I don't know whether he sang or not. I think he was unaccompanied.
In the opera.
Mrs. Johnson, did you have one in mind?
I know many orchestra leaders that could win brides by playing.
That
For
could
them,
win them.
yes.
Yes,
They can
yes.
lose them too the same way.
Yes, sometimes more quickly.
I got
Mr.
it.
Levant,
I'm a Meister singer. The
Meister
prize
singer.
contest, the song contest
Yes.
between Beckmesser and Walder.
who wins?
Walder, naturally.
And whom does he win?
He wins. What do you call it? Give
You're
me the
almost
first
there.
initial, will you please?
E.
E.
Yeah, I'll give you the second. E.V. I wonder whether you can guess the rest
Eva.
of it. Atta boy, Mr. Levant.
It was right on the tip of the last letter.
Right. All I do is give you a few consonants and a vowel, and you get it. That gives us 3 out of 3. So far, we're not stumped. F. Martin of Chicago sends this one in. This is a sound effects question, Mrs. Johnson and gentlemen. Identify the animal that makes each of the following sounds. Now, these are going to be very scary. Hold on to your seats. Let's have the first. Oh, Mrs. Johnson had her hand up.
Lion.
I beg pardon?
Lion.
Yes, lion is right. What's the lion doing? Can you tell from your seat?
He's growling.
He's growling. What's wrong with him, Mr. Johnson?
Well, he's probably eating, and he's very. There are other lions there, and he's sort of mad because they're taking his food.
Marvelous.
So he's
I'm
growling.
sure that's absolutely accurate. Absolutely accurate. You've got
I want
Mr.
to go
Adams.
home.
I knew Mr. Adams was going to be scared. Let's have the second of these sound effects. Sound like a Republican convention. Mr. Johnson?
That sounds to me like a hyena, but I'm not quite sure fighting. I'm not quite sure.
Would you like to hear it again?
Yes.
Let's have this once more. Does that still sound like a hyena to you,
Doesn't
Mr.
sound
Johnson?
like any African animal to me.
Is there
Well, maybe you haven't been in the right part of Africa.
is there
Mr.
water
Levant?
connected with that sound?
Water?
A burbling?
Liquid
Or
notes?
gurgling?
No, I don't think so. No, I don't think there's any water there. The answer seems to be the chattering of apes. The chattering of apes. Would you recognize it now, Mr. Johnson? You may never have met these
It
particular
doesn't
chattering
sound
apes.
like any. Oh yes, I've been where all the apes chatter.
You mean during your African or your American experience?
Both.
Well, it gives us one wrong. Now let's have the next. Mr. Adams is so scared that he won't even raise his hand. How about that? Mr. Kieran?
It sounds like one of the
That's
cat
cats.
tribe.
Name it.
Well, a tiger or a leopard.
The jagger.
What did you say, Mr. Levant?
J-A-G-U.
Jaguar.
That's the only one he didn't mention. What is that, incidentally?
Leopard, jaguar? No, it
Jaguar.
isn't. Beg pardon?
Jaguar.
Jaguar? No, it isn't any of those, though it
Jaguar.
is a member of the cat tribe, I believe. The panther.
Oh.
The panther. Do you recognize it now?
Well, we don't have panthers in Africa either.
Oh, that's too bad. You should have panthers in
You
Africa.
can
It
break
seems
your
a
lease
shame.
then if that's one.
Well, all we've got so far is the lions. Now let's have the fourth of these animals. Got that, Mr. Johnson? What is
That's
that?
the gibbon's ape.
How do you know that?
Because I used to imitate the gibbon's ape and call them so Mr. Johnson could record sound in our moving pictures in Borneo.
Well, can you do better than our sound effects man can do?
Well,
Would you care to
I'll
give us a
try.
gibbon? I'll be right over, Mr. Johnson. That only gives us 2 out
Yeah,
of 4.
you got that machine beat.
And sends $10 instead of the encyclopedia to Mr. Martin, and passes us on to the next question coming from Mrs. George Frankel of Baltimore. Name 3 book titles in the form of phrases or sentences that have passed into the language. For example, Shakespeare wrote a play called All's Well That Ends Well, which now is a famous phrase. Mr. Adams?
Any book at all?
Any book title at all which has
Babbitt.
I beg pardon?
Babbitt.
Yeah, that's a good
That's a good one. That's a very good one. Babbitt has certainly passed into the language. Mr. Levant?
one. Oedipus Rex.
Well, you mean the psychoanalytical language?
Well, it's in the medical jargon now.
Yes, well, that's just between you and me.
No, I've heard doctors whisper when I came around.
Really? Well, the Oedipus complex has certainly passed into the language, but I wouldn't say that the term Oedipus Rex itself has. Mr. Kieran?
Well, David Harum has become a phrase used.
Lately?
No, not very
No,
lately.
I wouldn't. I don't think I'd accept that. Mr. Levant?
Tarzan.
Tarzan, yes. I wish we'd get off the names of characters and try to think of phrases or sentences, remember, that have passed into the language. Oh, I can think of one.
Romeo and Juliet. He's
Oh,
some Romeo.
I don't think that's quite fair. The whole phrase, I mean. The whole title. Well, Anita Luce's Gentlemen Prefer Blondes would be one. How can you think of any others of that sort?
Mad Dogs and Englishmen by Noel Coward.
Not the title of a lyric, isn't it?
Yeah.
Rather than the title of a book. Mr.
Rip
Adams.
Van Winkle.
Well, that again is a name rather than a phrase.
Could we put I Married Adventure in there?
I'd love to put on my adventure. Give it a little time, it may pass into the language.
How to
Mr.
win
Johnson.
friends and influence people.
How to Meet Friends and Influence People, I think, may conceivably pass into the language. That's right, by Dale Carnegie. Live Alone and Like It by Marjorie Hillis. Can think of another. We've got to get 3. I think we've only got 2 legitimate ones. Well, this is not so difficult. How about Life Begins at 40 by Walter Pitkin would be one.
We don't believe that anymore. I don't remember it anymore.
You want to pass it out of the language? Oh, it's automatically passed out. Well, that gives us only 2 legitimate ones, and I think sends $10 to Mrs. Frankel. How about this question coming from Lillian Heck of Butler, Pennsylvania? Name the characters of fiction who were turned into the following animals.
This is part 2 of 2 parts of Information Please. This number 13359 from box 40, number 17.
You have to get 3 out of 4. What character was turned into a mouse? A character in fiction turned into a mouse. This is a pretty tough question. Mr. Kieran.
That's in Puss in Boots.
That's right.
It's the giant that had the castle that the Puss in Boots' young master aimed to get, and Puss persuaded this magician, this giant was also a magician, to change itself or himself or herself into a mouse for a minute, and she leaped on it and ate it all up.
That's right, Mr. Kieran. Very good. I don't know of any other case in literature in which that's true. I think that's pretty good, Mr. Kieran, to pick that out of the whole realm of legend and literature and get it right. And how about a dragon? What character was turned into a dragon? Mr. Levant.
That must be Wagnerian.
Must be.
Well, then it would be the 2 sweet boys, Fafner and Fasold.
Were they both turned into dragons in the...
No, well, you help me. One of them was.
Which one?
Or Fafner.
Yes. Fafner was turned into a dragon in which of the operas?
Well, he was knocked off in Siegfried in the second act, but he was in the opening opera, which is Das Rheingold.
That's Rheingold.
And he evidently had the ring, and he changed himself wearing a hood, and I think that's how Siegfried got the ring. And then he, you don't want to hear the whole 4 operas, do you? Is that right?
Yes, you're fine. I love to.
No, I can have lunch with James Taylor.
Very good. All right. How about this one? What character was turned, or what characters were turned into donkeys? Donkeys. Mr. Kieran.
Oh, no, not a
No?
whole donkey. I was
Take it
thinking
back.
of Midas. Only part of it.
How about it, gentlemen? Mr. Johnson?
Mimi upon a juror.
I beg pardon? The little boys in Pinocchio were turned
That's
into donkeys, weren't they?
All over the place.
You gentlemen and Mr. Johnson don't go to the movies. A lovely picture. The little boys in Pinocchio were turned into donkeys. That gives us 1 wrong. Have to get the next one right. Name the characters of fiction who were turned into men. Men will do as animals for the time being. Mr. Kieran.
Well, dragon's teeth were turned into men by Cadmus.
Yes, very good. I wouldn't think of dragon's teeth as being characters exactly. They're objects. Living characters, perhaps. Can you think of any? Well, I can think of 1 or 2 cases. The penguins in Anatole France's Penguin Island. Mr. Kieran, another one?
Galatea was changed into a woman. That's just as good, or even better.
Yes, yes. Next best thing to a man. I think the mice in Cinderella were turned into coachmen, weren't they?
That's right.
That would be a good answer.
They were non-union, though.
And in the case of Odysseus, the story of Odysseus, remember, Mr.
They
Kieran?
were turned into a swine.
Yes, and then later
back
on.
into men.
That's right. So that would do as an answer, too. You think we ought to let this question go as correct or not, Mr. Adams? You're always a good...
I think
Depends
we.
how much she needs the encyclopedia.
Miss Heck, do you need this encyclopedia very much? Somehow it seems to me she does. I'm
I
going to send the
give it
$10 to Miss Heck and the encyclopedia. That gives us, let's see, a survey of the cash drawer proves that $30 have been paid out to the stumpers. And while the stumpees are gnashing their teeth, Mr. Cross will say a few words for us.
And I'll take my cue from Mr. Fadiman, who mentioned a survey of the cash drawer. During recent years, the taking of surveys seems to have become our most popular occupation. Surveys and polls tell us what we listen to on the radio, how many of us are losing our hair, and which leg of our trousers we pull on first. But I don't think we've ever taken a formal poll of the drinkers of sparkling Canada Dry water. If such a poll were to be taken, however, the figures would be pretty large, because Canada Dry water has rapidly become one of the most popular club sodas on the market. Smiling faces, popular hosts, cheerful guests, and satisfied dealers indicate without benefit of polling that sparkling Canada Dry water has been taken up by the public in a great big way. So we're not going to ring your doorbell and ask you whether or not you drink Canada Dry, but we're certainly going to continue recommending it to you because we think sparkling Canada Dry water is one of the finest club sodas on the market today.
Mr. Cross, a survey of the clock indicates that you have delivered your few words in precisely 58 seconds. And now shall we go on with a question coming to us from John J. Dillon, Jr. of Pittsburgh. Have to get 3 out of 4 on this, Mr. Johnson and gentlemen. Identify the performers who were billed as follows, and quote a famous line or part of a song or the title of a song associated with each. The first is The Cowboy Philosopher. Mrs. Johnson.
Will Rogers?
Will Rogers is right. And can you think of a line associated with Will Rogers? Perhaps Mr. Adams can help us out.
All I know is what I read in the paper.
Yes, that's right. I think that's probably the most famous of them. Do you have another one in
No,
mind,
that's the
Mr.
one I
Levant?
have.
Good. Now,
Tell
who
me,
was
too.
billed as Brunhilde of the Bowery?
What a billing.
Good billing, eh, Mr. Levant? Brunhilde of the Bowery. Mr. Adams.
I don't think she was billed as that, but it might have been Maggie Klein.
I think she was billed as that. At least she's billed as that on my card. Maggie Klein is right, Mr. Adams.
Well, that's a pure guess. Never saw her.
Very good. Goes back a long way. How about a line associated with her?
Throw 'em down McCluskey.
Throw 'em down McCluskey, yes. That gives us 2 out of 2. Who was billed as the high-hatted tragedian of jazz? Mr. Levant.
Ted Lewis.
Ted Lewis. And a line associated with Ted Lewis.
Are you happy?
That's not exactly it, I think.
Why not? It's Are You Happy? Or When My Baby Smiles at Me.
That I don't know. How about it, Mr. Johnson?
But Are You Happy? He always
Is everybody
said.
happy? Isn't that
Oh,
the...
I'm sorry.
I think that's the way the
These
phrase
are
is.
tough times.
Mr. Johnson? That's good enough. And finally, Miss Tabasco. Miss Tabasco.
I remember that.
Oh,
That's
you don't. You
I
couldn't
do.
possibly. You're
I
too
do.
young, Mr. Levant.
Burlesque. Lena Daly. Miss Tabasco Sauce, it was.
No.
Mr. Adams?
Eva Tangway.
Eva Tangway, I think.
I
would be
remember
right.
her, too.
Eva Tangway, and what's the famous phrase
I don't
associated?
care.
I don't care. Thank you, Mr. Adams. That gives us 4 out of 4, and sends us to this question from Lawrence L. Collins of Albany, California. And I'm going to ask Mr. Levant to go to the piano, and I'm going to ask you, Mr. Levant, to play for us, in your best manner, which is the only one you have, 3 Blind Mice. Can you play 3 Blind Mice? I've never heard it done with more finesse. Now, the studio pianist will play the first phrase of each of 3 well-known compositions. And it so happens that all of them begin with the theme of 3 Blind Mice, which Mr. Levant has given us. But the rhythmic patterns are different. And Mr. Levant is asked to identify and play each of them. Now, the studio pianist will play for us the first.
The Schumann Concerto.
The Schumann Concerto.
Play the other part.
That's right, Mr. Levant. Thank you very much. I didn't expect to get that classic whistle of yours in addition. That's
Well,
extra.
the orchestra, I think the clarinet has the melody.
Now let's have the second of them. Studio pianist first.
Wait.
Mr. Levant?
That's Beethoven. Something like that.
What's the name of the composition, Mr.
That's
Levant?
Opus 81, I think. This has got a fancy program title.
80.
Absence, Farewell, Return, everything.
That's right. The Sonata in E flat, the Farewell, the Opus 81A. That's hitting it on the nose, Mr. Levant. Thank you. And now the third and last.
No?
No.
Why not? It's the same.
I'd like to hear that third again.
All right. It could be, wait. All right,
What is that you're playing?
That's the Flying Dutchman.
That's
the
right.
orchestra.
The Flying Dutchman. 3 out of 3. Thank you very much, Mr. Levant. Now Angela Dilla of New York sends this one in. We have to get 2 out of 3. Each of the following quotations is a remark addressed by a son or daughter to a parent. Name the characters and identify the quotations. Here's the first. The clock in the steeple strikes 1. Oh, we have 2 hands up. Mr. Kieran first.
Well, that's Father, dear Father, come home with me now.
That's
the clock in the steeple strikes 1.
That's right.
By
that-
Henry C. Work.
Henry C. Work, who also wrote what even
Marching
more famous
Through Georgia.
Marching Through Georgia, Mr. Adams. Thank you very much. It is a wise father that knows his own child. Mr. Kieran again.
That's from The Merchant of Venice. That's Lancelot, I believe, and Gobbo, his father.
That's right. That's exactly right. Lancelot Gobbo to the elder Gobbo. That's pretty good going, Mr. Kieran. From The Merchant of Venice, what act would you guess, Mr. Kieran?
That's quite early in the play.
Yes, it's about 9:15, I think. Act 2.
Act 2, Scene 2.
I don't know about the scene. You're probably right, Mr. Adams. And how about this one? I'd walk 1,000,000 miles for one of your smiles.
My mammy.
That's Mr. Levant. And not one of those animal noises. Who says it to whom?
Jolson sang it, and it probably is at this moment in
Very,
Detroit.
very possibly, yes. Al Jolson to his perennial mammy. That gives us 3 out of 3. Now, what can you do with this one from Max Mahler of Scarsdale, New York? Get 3 out of 4. Name an opera singer, an author, a comedian, and a prize fighter who took their names from geographical locations. First, the opera singer who took his or her name from a geographical location. Mr. Adams.
Nellie Melba.
Not the slightest doubt of it. What was the location that you took it from?
Melbourne, Australia.
From Melbourne, Australia. That's right. Very good. Scotty wouldn't do, Mr. Adams, I suppose. No. How about the author? The author. An author who took his or her name. Mr. Adams?
Jack London and Irving Berlin.
No, I think those are their real names. I say
Oh,
took the
took
name.
the name.
Yes.
Uh,
Took a name. In other words, had another name, and then changed it for a name which is derived from geography.
Sir Walter Scott.
No, that was his real name, too, and very lucky for him.
Mhm.
Now, Anatole France, the French novelist, his real name was Thibault, Thibault, and he took the name of Anatole France. That's one wrong. Now, how about a comedian who took his name from a place? Mr. Levant?
Well, Frisco, which is a contraction. They
Sure.
don't like to hear it that way in San Francisco.
I know, but that's quite right.
But
Very
still,
good.
Joe San Francisco would be long.
Too long, yes. You wouldn't get good billing with Joe San Francisco. What was his real name? Do you happen to know, Mr. Levant?
Joseph is one of his names.
Yes, it was
It's
his
his last name, yeah. it's his
last name, Louis Joseph. Very
That's
good.
right.
How about a prize fighter? Mr. Kieran?
Well, it was a prize fighter named Rocky Kansas.
Sure. That's exactly right. I bet you can't. No one could think of another one. Rocky, Kansas.
He's
when-
from Buffalo.
Beg pardon?
He was from Buffalo, wasn't he? Why did he pick
I don't
Kansas?
know.
Is
Mr.
that
Kieran,
right,
was he
John?
from Buffalo?
Yeah, I think he was from Buffalo.
Why did he take the name of Rocky, Kansas?
That's a curious
He could
quirk.
spell it, probably.
Well, I see our time is up, and now here's Expert Cross with words of wisdom aimed particularly at all you housewives.
It's a smart housewife who makes Canada Dry ginger ale a part of her summer menu. For Canada Dry, with its not too sweet nor too dry flavor, adds zest and sparkle to wilted appetites. It's always refreshing, delightfully thirst-quenching. Canada Dry contains only the choicest Jamaica ginger, selected spices, and other fine ingredients bottled under the most sanitary conditions, always under the constant supervision of graduate chemists. Canada Dry is pure and wholesome, kind to the digestive system. So, for added sparkle in summer meals, add Canada Dry, the champagne of ginger ales, to your shopping list tonight. Now here's Mr. Fadiman.
According to our rough estimate, Canada Dry's cash register is lighter by a total of $30. And that means the 3 sets of the encyclopedia have also gone the way of expert stumpers. Thank you, Mrs. Johnson, for joining so spiritedly in Canada Dry's party this evening. Now, next week, we'll have Mr. Adams and Mr. Kieran, and as our 2 guests, first, that veteran information pleaser and musical authority, Mr. Deems Taylor, and second, the star of the play The Man Who Came to Dinner, Mr. Monty Woolley. Now, don't forget, for every question we use, whether or not it's answered correctly, the sender gets $5. And if your question stumps our board of experts, you not only get $10 more, but in addition, a complete 24-volume set of the Encyclopedia Britannica. Remember, send your letters with questions and the correct answers to Canada Dry, 1 Pershing Square, New York City.
You will find Canada Dry ginger ale, sparkling water, lime Ricky, and Tom Collins mixer at your favorite neighborhood stores. The large family size bottle is most economical, costing only 15 cents plus bottle deposit. This is Milton Cross saying goodnight for Canada Dry until next week at this same time.
Information Please has been a Blue Network program of the National Broadcasting Company, Radio City, New York.
This is the end of Reel 398, B-side.